This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Parents are the first teachers. They're the first educators.
We've learned that the first 3 years of a baby's life is the most important.
Good readers are made in the laps of their parents.
Reading, music, all of those things are so important for an unborn child and then for the first 3 years of a child's life.
We know that quality early childhood education sets the stage for a successful school career.
And so when we are responding to those needs and loving that child and creating that healthy atmosphere for them, we are laying the foundational framework for that child to do well in school.
This program is a part of American Graduate. Let's make it happen. A public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Well, prenatal care definitely affects the well-being of a child. You know, it's important that mothers get good care before their baby is born. I really recommend that they're under the care of a physician. It's very challenging for children when, or for babies, newborn babies, when a mother just shows up at the hospital to deliver and has never seen OBGYN before. Just to be able to get the mother's health history, to be able to get any concerns, anything going on with the pregnancy. You know, we really need to be aware of those factors because there's several things that we can do as mothers and do them right to help give that baby the best start that he or she can have.
Number one, I feel like feeding yourself healthy food and eating in a healthy way yourself is the best place to start, because you're setting a good example for the child, but you're also giving them building blocks when you're pregnant and when you're nursing that lead toward a healthy body for that child. If you can exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, your baby's risk of obesity later in life goes down significantly. The children have higher IQs. They have better vision. There have actually been studies that have proven all these things, so we know that it's definitely the best thing. And if you're unable to breastfeed, then for long term, even breastfeeding for a short period of time gives your newborn immunity and helps protect them from infection.
Another thing is just what happens when a mother gets prenatal care. They get education about nutrition, you know, taking those prenatal vitamins, just getting that folic acid, which is found in prenatal vitamins, that it actually decreases birth defects. Another thing, if you don't have access to prenatal vitamins, you can just take a multivitamin and just check the content of folic acid, make sure that that's there.
Eating whole foods, not feeding your baby junk food, staying away from packaged, processed, sugary foods. The convenience foods are not the best thing. What we really want to feed our babies is whole foods. It's the wisest thing. If the baby doesn't develop a taste for those things early on, then they're not really looking for it. People often start giving their kids things that are high sugar or high calorie drinks. And that happens a lot of times around 18 months to 2 years. And we will pick up on that by the changes sometimes in the growth chart. They'll come in for their visit and they will have skyrocketed on their weight percentile. And when I start asking questions, often they're drinking sweet tea, or they're drinking sodas, or they're drinking Kool-Aid, or even juice. And a lot of people think juice is healthy, but too much juice is a bad thing. So we try to recommend staying away from more than 4 ounces a day.
Things to avoid that can be really potentially hazardous to an unborn baby, things like avoiding alcohol, drugs, nicotine. All of those things can be very detrimental to the development of a newborn baby.
It affects the fetal growth. Infants don't grow as well if they are exposed to smoke. And then after they're born, when they live in this environment, babies tend to have more problems with cough and mucus, as well as asthma, pneumonia, other things of that nature. Infants who are exposed to secondhand smoke often have more ear infections. This can also lead to problems with learning because of hearing problems, which lead to speech and language problems. If they have to continue smoking outside and changing clothes before they come in contact with the child, as well as keeping the smoke out of the car.
And of course, any drug that you feel like you need to take, whether it's an allergy pill, a cold pill, anything that you think you are considering taking while you're pregnant, you need to run by your OBGYN.
There has been a huge increase in the last few years in a condition called neonatal abstinence syndrome. And this is a problem that's been specifically worse in the Upper Cumberland than it is in a lot of areas. These babies are basically born withdrawing. If mom has been using, the biggest problem has been with prescription painkillers, but if mom's been using these drugs prior to delivery, then when the baby is born, obviously the medicine is not there anymore. And so their body begins to have withdrawal symptoms just like anybody would who stops suddenly. So often these babies stay in the hospital 5 weeks, maybe longer, and they require very intense care, and they're very irritable, they're in a lot of pain, and they're stressed out. The problems don't stop there. A lot of these kids go on later in life to have what we're finding is ADHD. There are a lot of other developmental issues with these babies, and then there are a lot of social problems. I think the community is really working hard at trying to address this problem. The legislature just recently repealed the Intractable Pain Act, which will help with doctors prescribing as many narcotics. And so that's where the problem a lot of times begins. One other major health problem that I see, unfortunately, in babies is SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome. And it's a very, obviously, devastating thing that happens sometimes. And sometimes it happens and we don't really have an explanation as to why. Things that decrease, or one thing that decreases the risk is breastfeeding. If you can exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, or even a year, you significantly reduce that risk. There are other factors involved. Secondhand smoke increases the risk of SIDS. Sleeping in the bed with your child increases the risk of SIDS. You know, there's some rules about sleep, and it's ABC, alone, on their back, in their crib. That's the safest way for a baby to sleep. And seeing your pediatrician on a regular basis, especially when they're babies, that affects their health in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of screening that goes on during that time. I think a lot of the things that we see that are simple problems, we're able to solve at these well child visits. We screen for hearing and vision problems. If not with questions, then we actually have specific tests that we do at certain ages where we test for them. And like if a child has a hearing problem, we'll make the referral, get that screened further, and if need be, sometimes they get hearing aids. And early intervention is really important on that. So we do screen newborns at birth. And if they have a problem, they have a follow-up testing, and then potentially some sort of hearing aid applied so that they can begin to develop their language. Because that language is developing so early, if they can't hear, then that's a problem. The other thing that's absolutely imperative in my mind is keeping your child's immunizations up to date. There are still diseases that circulate that are vaccine preventable that are becoming a little bit more prevalent now because of pockets of people who are not vaccinating. Child abuse is a big problem for infants and for small children and for big kids. But these babies have trouble learning because they're just trying to survive. I think it's more common in the setting of addiction and emotional instability. We do screen new moms for depression. It's called the Edinburgh test, and it's an Edinburgh depression scale, I think is what it's called. But it's a certain score that the mom gets based on answering certain questions, and we do that at the first 2 well child visits, and that helps us to evaluate if that mother needs to go and see her obstetrician to follow up and treat those issues. But unfortunately, we still see infants who have devastating injuries from abuse. Sometimes it's neglect, but a lot of times it's actual physical abuse, and then there's sexual abuse and emotional abuse, and sometimes those other things are a little bit more difficult to pick up on, and it takes somebody speaking up. And I think when it's the way the community can help with that is if they feel that there's a problem, there's a way to anonymously report those things or report what they've seen, and they should not hesitate to make that report. In fact, they have a duty to report that because children can't defend themselves.
Do you know, unfortunately, ages 4 and younger is the most physically abused stage in our children's lives. Many children are abused, baby birth to 4 years. And the reason for that is because developmentally, sometimes parents and caregivers try to put them on a level that they're not there yet. So I think it's very important that we realize developmentally where our toddlers are. And you know what? They want to do it themselves. They want to be autonomous. They want to make choices. And so I always say, let's let them make those choices. Let's let them do it themselves when we can. Now, sometimes we can't, and we have to make those calls as a parent. Sometimes we have to set those limits. And you know what? The truth is, limits are good. Boundaries are good. It makes a child feel safe. But let them make choices where they can.
If they can just remember to stay in the moment with their child and spend one-on-one time with them, even in the middle of all the chaos, they're still teaching their child something very valuable. And sometimes they can escape from the anxiety that they're feeling if they can manage to stay right there with their kid. And I think if they're emotionally stressed out and kind of checked out, then it's hard to do that. But if they can just focus even for just a few minutes, a few times a day, they're giving their child something very valuable.
One of the biggest things that I want to say too is the idea of the self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is that children who have positive things spoken over them actually live up to those expectations. And so it's very important that as parents that we're a cheerleader. And it doesn't mean that we cannot address negative behavior, that we cannot help redirect behavior or help them overcome in certain areas that we identify. But you know what? The truth is, when we say as parents, you're valuable, you're smart, you can do it, and help them become, a contributing member of society, they will succeed. They will succeed in school. They really can do great things, and there's so many studies done about the importance of that one parent or family member. Maybe the parent's out of the loop, but there's somebody who cares about that child. And when that child has that, we actually call that a protective factor in a child's life, that you know what? They succeed. They overcome great obstacles. Children can overcome great obstacles when there's somebody there supporting them, cheering them on, caring for them, and being that consistent person in their life.
One of the things that we run into is we'll have parents that are really wanting to work with their children, and they're not good readers themselves, and sometimes they're non-readers. And what we want to stress there is that get a book and let your baby hold the book. Show your baby how to hold the book so that the pictures are upright, and how you turn that you go through that book from front to back. You can make up stories with the pictures. You can as your baby starts talking, you can ask your baby questions. What color is the little girl's dress in this book? What does it look like the puppy dog is doing? Having that conversation with your baby. And it's a fantastic bonding opportunity to spend that time with your child. Your child is going to love that lap time. Good readers are made in the laps of their parents.
I do recommend that moms start reading to their children actually before birth. Sitting and reading a book aloud may feel a little bit silly, but your baby is hearing things before they're born and they're learning even then. And so beginning that habit and really, establishing that routine after they're born and sitting with them and going through books and talking about what things are and reading stories, and it helps their attention span, helps their focus. Their brain is developing so rapidly during that first year that they really do absorb a lot when you sit and read.
A child, an infant, or even before it's born, their brain starts developing. And reading, music, all of those things are so important for an unborn child, and then for the first 3 years of a child's life. Their little brain is like a sponge and it just soaks everything up.
At birth, I specifically remember trying to make eye contact as soon as possible and just looking her in the eyes and speaking to her. And I try to just say positive things and build them up, even in the hospital as a newborn, and tell them that they're loved, wanted, and I think eye contact is super important to infants, and they recognize my face and their dad's face. Sing to them, start reading really early. I like to go through books and really talk about the pages and colors, animals, what sounds they make.
When a baby's born, their brain is in an unfinished state. And there are several connections that still need to be made. Those neurons, those links are happening in a newborn's brain, and when those links occur and they're repeated over time, those connections, and when I say connections, I mean, hearing the human voice, seeing the human face, being cared for, being played with, even a simple game of peekaboo. That those children, that brain is, those connections are being made, and it becomes those connections become part of the brain's circuitry, or like hardwiring. And so we have found that human interaction is just so key in the development of a newborn's brain.
From birth to 5, your brain is growing at a much faster rate than it will at any other time during your life. And again, the first 12 months is when your brain is hardwiring itself to the sounds of your mother's native tongue.
So it's important to offer those images, offer yourself, let them see your face, let them hear your voice, and it just helps them make all those connections that are so crucial to that brain development in the beginning of their lives.
One of the things that we want in Putnam County is when a new mom leaves the hospital with her baby, and she's going out to put that baby in the car, here's what we know. That mom's already got a mental list of non-negotiables that she's going to be doing with that child every day, and she's rolling those things over in her head. And what we want to have happen is we want that new mom to be thinking, oh, I got to buckle my baby in her car seat. I've got to be sure that I feed my baby every day, that I change my baby's diaper, that I read to my baby 20 minutes every day. And we want that to be as non-negotiable in her mind and as important in her mind as any of these other things that she will be doing daily with her child.
But I always try to encourage people when they're doing those tasks, those things over and over, that it's so important to interact with your baby, to talk to them, let them hear your voice, because you know what, that's going to help them develop verbally. You know, they're hearing that voice and listening and developing vocabulary. And maybe they're not speaking to you yet, but all of those connections are being made.
Coming from the music teacher's perspective, when I taught K-4 music, and when a lot of these children came to me for the first time in kindergarten, I was amazed at the number that don't know the difference between a singing voice and a speaking voice, and just what to me seems like one of the most natural things to do, which is sing to your child. There's so many that don't do that. It really doesn't take any special music knowledge or skill to do that, but simple children's songs, lullabies, it makes all of the difference when your child is exposed to music at an early age, just for them to have an appreciation for it. You know, there's a lot of parents in this area that maybe think, oh, well, I don't have the money or the resources, the availability to sign my child up for an early childhood music class. It doesn't take that. You know, there's a lot of free resources out there. Checking out a CD of children's songs from the public library is a great way just to learn some nursery rhymes and folk songs that your children love repetition, you know, and they would love to hear that. But don't just play the CD, sing it in your own voice, because to me that's a huge part of bonding with your child, is to sing those songs to them, and the kids need to move to that music. That really makes a difference.
I think having experiences that are outside of the norm, like taking them and going to the park or doing things with other children, just letting your kids have a range of experiences, letting them do things with you, taking them to the store and talking to them while you're walking through the store and explaining what's going on, and just teaching them about the world.
As a mom, of a preschooler, I've sought out a lot of what kinds of things are available for us to go do during the day, and our public library offers, that is a great resource here in this community, and they offer so many different events. They have story time a couple of hours a week. They do I think it's called Read, Grow, Play session for toddlers and preschoolers that is just fantastic hands-on learning for these little guys. So there are so many things like that. A lot of times it's just seeking out those programs and resources and finding out what's available in your community.
Later success in school can be linked back to early success in early nurturing experiences in early childhood development. You know, children who have had rich experiences in their early years where they have made all those connections. When children miss that, interestingly enough, that just dries up and dies. You cannot go back and get that. So if you miss that in early childhood, when a baby's born, when their brain is in that unfinished state, and you're not helping make all those connections, those are connections you cannot go back and get.
Birth to 5 is when you're picking up on sounds and speech and language. Your vocabulary is growing. We know that 4-year-olds from some homes will only have about a 13 million word, will have heard 13 million words by the time they're 4 years old. And this is typically from homes in poverty. And then that goes all the way up to middle and upper income homes, where we know that by the time a child is 4 years old, they will have been exposed to upwards of getting close to 50 million words. That's a huge gap to fill if the child hasn't been read to again between the ages of birth to 5.
So you have got to be the type of parent that is proactive, that you're making a difference for your child, that you're reading to them, that you're singing to them, that you're interacting with them, that you're helping them develop healthy social skills, that you're helping them develop, that can-do attitude, that I can do, I can accomplish, that I'm worth something, that I'm valuable, that I can contribute to society. And so I think all of those things factor in as we parent our children, and they help children succeed later in life.
Be an American Graduate Champion. Here are ways you can be a caring, consistent adult in a child's life. Speak positive words into a child's life. Read to a child for 20 minutes each day. Be proactive in a child's life.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z.
This program is a part of American Graduate. Let's make it happen. A public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.